it's your friend and humble narrator, Lou Brutus, the host of the world famous Hard Drive and Hard Drive XL, this year celebrating its 25th anniversary. Anyway, in this segment coming up, pieces of a few different interviews I recently did. The first is going to be with Matt Tuck of Bullet For My Valentine. Then you'll get some of my conversation with DL, the new singer for Bad Wolves, and then an up-and-coming musician, a kid you've probably never heard of before, but he's got a bright future, I think anyway, Tom Morello. Anyway, if you like what you see, and yes, I realize Tom Morello has been around for a while and famous. I was just goofing off because I'm overly caffeinated. Anyway, if you like what you see, hit like and also hit the share. And also make sure to subscribe to the Hard Drive Radio YouTube channel and check out more stuff at harddriveradio.com. Anyway, here's Matt Tuck and me from Bullet For My Valentine. Although he's in Bullet For My Valentine and I'm just me. Hey, I'm Lou Brutus, and for my next conversation, I go to London, England, where I'm joined by Matt Tuck of Bullet For My Valentine. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. I must ask, what is the S on your hat? What is the hat for?
The S, I actually had this from a festival in Japan called Summer Sonic.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a free hat that I picked up when we last played there, I think 2018 or 19, something like that. 18 it must have been. So yeah, that's what it means. Summer Sonic.
I would imagine with all the years you've been on the road, you have sometimes had your ass saved from having to wear old laundry by, hey, there's t-shirts from the promoter or,
Yeah, absolutely, man. The amount of clothes and freebies you accumulate along the way is incredible, you know what I mean? So it's always very grateful for those moments where you can switch out a stinky pair of pants or a dirty t-shirt, it does come in useful a lot of the time.
And if I remember correctly, the band now is it 23 years in total?
In total, I don't know, I have to do the math. Yeah, about 20. Well, as Bullet, probably not, but yeah, as the start of the whole process that evolves eventually into Bullet, yes. Probably
Right.
About 23 years or so.
It's an obvious question, but does it seem that long?
No, not when you get asked that question and you're sitting in the here and now in the present. It just blink of an eye, man. Time just, I don't know what's happened or where it's gone. But yeah, blink of an eye. But it's been cool. It's been a good ride.
Do you recall the first time you met Padge?
Not the first time. We went to the same school together, so I've known Padge like most of my life.
Yeah.
And it was probably around the age of 14, 15 when you start to I first started to get into music, and you kind of gravitate towards like-minded people at that age, and you find your group, your gang, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, he was one of those guys that I just saw one day in the canteen, just sitting there playing an acoustic guitar, and I was like, that's my guy. So just went over, started playing, just showed him some, because he was only starting to learn at that point, and I already kind of got it down to a good enough extent where I was like, hey man, check this out. And I ended up showing him like a few Nirvana songs or something like that, and that was it. Here we are.
And rattle off, if you would, some of the bands that you guys would have gravitated towards back when you were kids at that age.
Yeah, well, at the very start, like 13, 14 years old, it was Metallica, Guns N' Roses. Those were the two. It was that era, early mid 90s. Metallica and Guns N' Roses they just owned rock and metal. Those were the two bands, and then other things would come in, like the Nirvana, the grunge scene was really big at that time as well. Still remember the day I found out that Kurt wasn't with us anymore, all that kind of stuff. It was a really kind of mad time for us as young kids growing up, just getting kind of I don't know, exposed to all these amazing bands and all this amazing music, but then having to like deal with the stuff of like one of your favorite frontmen isn't with us anymore. So I don't know, it's a cool time, but it was deviating off a little bit of subject there. But yeah, Nirvana, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and then it kind of branched off to everything from bands like the Eagles to bands like Sepultura and Machine Head and Pantera and all that cool metal shit. So
let's go back to Metallica and Guns N' Roses for just a moment, if we may. Those are two bands that are still releasing new music, who are still playing for huge crowds, who are still active, vibrant, creative groups. What do you think it is about them that keeps them going? And what do you think you can learn from them to give yourself creativity as both a touring act and as a creative entity?
I think what keeps any kind of creative going, whether you're a songwriter or an artist of any description, really, it's just the love of what you do. You know, what we do isn't, it never feels like a job. It just feels like a passion and a hobby that, you know, we're very fortunate enough to call it a living and earn a living out of it. You know what I mean? So I just think I think it's just the love of touring, of writing music, being in a band, creating music, performing it. I think, you know, there's nothing quite like that. And I think once you're in that world, it's really hard to kind of not want to keep on doing it. So I think that's kind of why these, you know, these bands are still around, still doing it, and still hungry. It's because it's not actually work. It's just a passion. It's love. It's like, it's your soul. It's, you create this stuff, you know, and there's no better feeling than that. So I think just think it's the love of music and creating music, really.
That's a great point. And I should let folks who are watching this know that before you and I hopped on officially, we were chatting about the Stones, the Rolling Stones. I had just seen their tour opener in St. Louis. And I had a number of friends say, well, you know, why does Mick Jagger still do it? You know, the guy's obviously rich and he doesn't have to tour. And I'm like, man, getting out in front of 50,000 people who love you and getting to play music, that shit just can't get old. You know, that's got to be fun all the time. Can you see yourself touring into your 70s or 80s?
Ah, man, you know, who knows, man? You know, like the way things are going, it's absolutely possible. It's just whether you've got that hunger and the energy anymore. You know what I mean? It is, again, it's not really about the money and stuff. It's about if you still enjoy it. If you're having fun, then it doesn't matter if you're 18 or 80. If you're having fun and enjoying it, why not? You know what I mean? There's no limits on it. It just depends if your head's still in the game and you want to do it, I guess.
This time around, through the modern miracle of Zoom, DL from Bad Wolves joins me. DL, where are you?
Hey, I'm in my home studio right now in Massachusetts.
Where in Massachusetts are you?
Like the Western Mass, like Springfield area.
Yeah, you have been part of that. You know, I call it the West Mass music mafia for a long,
Yes.
long time. And I've had other artists speak about it before, but tell me about the speciality of that area, because it really is sort of a magical place for hard rock and metal.
Yeah, it really is, man. It just seems to be a breeding ground for rock and metal. You know, Stained is from this area, Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall, All That Remains, Unearthed. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So yeah, I feel humbled and grateful every day to get brought up in this area and have the camaraderie. We're all friends. We all still hang out. I believe, you know, because I do production work now, behind the scenes, whatever, creative stuff. I believe next month or so I'm going to start working again on the next All That Remains with them. I don't know if that's, you know, even a thing yet or anything, but yeah, you know, we're all tight and we all hang out and it's great. I love it.
Is it because there's just not much else to do up in that part of the country that everybody forms bands?
I'll be honest with you, man. Yeah, I think you nailed that one. Yeah, there's just not much going on and everybody either turns to sports or music, you know.
You know, and with the groups you've played in, and of course with all the folks, some of whom you named that you've worked with as a producer, that's why I thought, you know, you sliding into the Bad Wolves gig was probably going to be easier for you than it could have been for other people, because you are used to working and sort of stepping into other creative aggregates. Is that the case?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I believe that was, you know, one of the reasons from the get-go, when it came to the tryout process, when they were looking for a new guy, that I kind of had a leg up. I had a relationship with most of the guys in the bands to begin with anyway, but you know, it made it really easy that I have a studio that I work out of, and I'm able to track my vocals quickly. So they sent me 3 instrumentals the day of them looking, and that night I tracked them and I had them back to them the next day, you know, sounding good quality in a way that they could really like let it kind of sink in what I actually sound like. You know, it's not too demo-y. I'd imagine they were getting some submissions from people just singing into their phones or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely helped for sure moving forward with that stuff.
And certainly you've had such a really impressive wide array of experiences. But do you still get nervous with something like this, particularly, like a big gig like this?
Yes and no.
Mm.
Yes, just because it's a different role than what I'm used to. I don't have a guitar in front of me anymore, so I can't really. It's like that.
What do you do with your hands? Yeah,
it's like that scene in that Will Ferrell movie where he's like
Edward Scissorhands.
Yes, that too. Yes. So at the same time, no, because it's just kind of same job, different suit, different outfit, right? So yes and no. I think more so I'm just really excited. It's going to be really fun, and I'm really excited, especially when we go live with this stuff. There's going to be points in the set where I can put the mic in my back pocket and go have a sip, or I can go get in the crowd and give everybody high fives, and I have a guitar in my way. So that's kind of cool too.
And you've been smart enough your entire career. I don't think you've ever been a drummer because, when you're first making it in the music industry and trying to do gigs, being a drummer, like that's the shittiest thing to do because you've got all
you're
the
just locked in.
Yeah,
you're just locked in back there. You have all this gear. Oh, forget it. God bless you, John.
So what is it about your personality, the way you were brought up, or the way your genes are hardwired? Why is it you suppose that you're able to? You've worked with a number of different bands, both as a member and as a producer, because some guys are great musicians, but if they had to corral and do the sort of production sort of thing, they'd end up killing everybody in the studio.
Right. I just think there's a lot of push and pull. Everybody wants their voice to be heard. And it's just, I love the collaborative effort in the studio. And it's not always the case, but you definitely, especially as a producer, you try and listen to everybody's voice and make everybody feel important. And especially, with Bad Wolves and stuff, it's just, I think moving forward, that's something that we really want to emphasize as a group, that not any one guy in the band is more important than the other, because it's just, especially now being in the fold and everything. I always knew how talented these guys are, but now that we've, put a record together, and just been in the same room so much, working on music and talking about it's incredible how talented all of these guys are. Each guy in the band, could in their own right be a producer. So it's I think that's really important, just including everybody and letting everybody have a voice to some degree, for sure.
Before we dive into anything, tell me about that studio that you're in right now, and tell me the kind of stuff you've done in there.
Sure. I mean, this is my studio, Veritas Studios, at my home, and I've made countless records here and soundtracks for films and things. It's like over the course of pretty much everything that I've recorded over the last 11 years or so has come out of this studio. Though, we're on the, interestingly, this is a studio that is great, sounds fantastic, but I don't know how to work it. I don't know how to run it. I don't know how to, the only button they let me touch is like the volume knob here. So when the world shut down in 2020, I was put at a great disadvantage because not only were there not going to be live shows, I was going to be unable to record until there was sort of a revelatory moment, which may come as a surprise to some of your listeners, but came from Kanye West, where I read an article where Kanye said that he had recorded the vocals for 2 of his hit albums into the voice memo of his phone. And I thought, if it's good enough for Kanye vocals, perhaps I can shred some Marshall Stack Fury straight at my phone. And that was the genesis of the Atlas Underground Fire record. I just started recording riffs into my phone and sending it to producers and engineers, and artist friends around the world, and created this kind of, alone in the studio, created this kind of musical community that was global.
A quick aside, I'm not terribly surprised on the memo thing for the phones, because the audio for those has gotten really, really good. And we've done a number of things the last several years where artists they're stuck on the road, or they've had a meltdown of equipment, and pardon the language, the shit sounds really good.
Fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic. Like, I'm going to throw away all my expensive microphones. You know what I mean? Like that was a scam.
Stock and Neumann is plummeting now. Telefunken is screwed
after this interview.
Well, you mentioned the record and the let's say, challenges to getting it together with everybody scattered about. If you don't mind being or blowing your own horn, give me a nice laundry list of the folks on it.
Sure.
I could do it, but people
Sure,
would
no, I'd
much
be
rather
happy to
hear
save
it
you.
from you.
It was a real honor and a pleasure to work with artists from differing genres, but all of great talent. First of all, there's a fellow by the name of Bruce Springsteen, another one by the name of Eddie Vedder, the hard rocking band Bring Me the Horizon, alternative superstars Fantagram, Josh and Sarah there, Chris Stapleton and I wrote a song together, Grandson, a fantastic young artist, Mike Posner. We recorded our song, but we began recording the song. Between beginning and ending of recording the song, he summited Mount Everest. You heard me right. He summited Mount Everest. Damian Marley, perhaps you've heard of him. Prototype, who's a tremendous like kind of rock and roll EDM collaborator. Femme, who's a great new young artist. The band Refused, punk rockers from Sweden, and Palestinian DJ Sama Abdul Hadi. That's the and myself. I play guitar on the thing too. So that's those are the collaborators.
Yeah, you're not so bad yourself, and you keep.
Well, the idea was, I mean, stuck here with my phone and in a room, it really, I appreciated the challenge, because the way I've made most of my records, I think this is my 21st or 22nd record that I made, is it's four guys in a room looking at each other and you kind of vibe off this was very different. And so for me, it was liberating in a way. Like I would, send Bring Me the Horizon 4 or 5 riffs. I come up here, set a beats per minute in my headphones, rock 4 or 5 riffs, send it off, done. Then they would come back, they would pick and choose what they wanted. And so the record like had a very different genesis than most of the music I made, but it really pushed me as an artist in a lot of different directions. And my guitar, I love, shredding all over this record was a real joy as well.
Did you ever hit any rough patches with anybody? And you don't have to name names or
Sure.
anything, but
sure. I mean,
were there ever points where you're just not getting what you want?
Sure. Well, sometimes people are more available or less available than you might want, and everybody's living their crazy lives during this is over the course of the last year, so during lockdown. But it's the good news is, like, while it was a very stressful time around, we've got my mom who's 90. I actually play in my mom's basement again. My mom lives right upstairs here. So I've got my mom who's 97. I have my mother-in-law who's 90. My kids who are doing Zoom school, losing their minds doing that. And so we're running kind of like a nursing home and a daycare center and a kennel. And I would come up here a couple hours a day and remind myself that I'm a musician as well. And so that was very liberating, really a life raft in a way.
Was there any chance the album was actually going to be called Nursing Home Day School Kennel?
I could have named one. I mean, we certainly could have had a sitcom come out of here very, very, very easily. But let me tell you a story of one of the songs, like the song "Highway to Hell," which was the collaboration with Bruce and
Eddie,
Eddie Vedder. Is like, we have a history with that song, and I was playing with the E Street Band over the course of about 6 years, and we were in Perth, Australia, the home of Bon Scott, and I wanted to pay my respects to Bon Scott's grave there. So I went to the beach during the day, and I was out there in the cemetery around 11 o'clock at night, unable to find Bon Scott's grave. And out of the distance comes like a moped, and this light comes in the middle of it's 2 people in the cemetery, me and a moped headed towards me, and it's this heavy-set guy with like a German army helmet and a shirt that reads, "I don't give a shit, but if I did, you're the one I'd give it to." And I'm like, that guy's going to know where Bon Scott's grave is. And sure enough, I pay my respects at the grave. I go back to the hotel bar, and there's Bruce. I'm like, "Bruce, do you think that there's the possibility that the E Street Band and AC/DC might overlap in any way while we're here in Australia?" And he's like, "Maybe." So we began rehearsing Highway to Hell at Soundcheck over the course of the next couple cities. We found ourselves in Melbourne playing a huge soccer stadium, like 80,000 people soccer stadium. And Eddie Vedder was at the show. He was doing a solo tour of his own at the same time. And I had an idea. I go knocking on Bruce's door. I'm like, "Bruce, I got an idea. We are in Australia, where AC/DC is king. We have learned how to play a song called Highway to Hell, which is the unofficial national anthem of Australia. What if we open the show with Highway to Hell with Eddie Vedder?" And he was like, "That sounds like a good idea." And we did. And it was, if you think you've ever seen an audience lose their minds, you haven't, unless you were at that show. And it was really like this apex moment in the history of live rock and roll. And as I was making this record with a lot of the young collaborators, Grandson and Feminine, I wanted like some of my bros on it. I wanted a record that had like the greatest rock and roll, one of the greatest rock and roll songs of all time, Highway to Hell, sung by two of the greatest rock and roll singers, Bruce and Eddie.
Well, let's go a little bit further into that tune. What is it about the original version of Highway to Hell that makes it Highway to Hell? Why is that such a special song?
I mean, it's this kind of joyful anthem of irreverent rebellion. I mean, you have to remember at the time, and maybe less so now, where like AC/DC was a band that was feared by parents, you know, and it was like feared by clergymen and whatnot. And that was a song that was a global staple of just sort of Bon Scott's irreverent joy in sort of rubbing it in the face of authority. And the Highway to Hell, by the way, is a literal highway in Perth. There is a highway that one can drive on that is known as the Highway to Hell, which I didn't know until I was told about that by the guy with the shirt in the cemetery. But yeah, I mean, it's really like, I mean, AC/DC has it's not their only global anthem, but it's certainly one that's very, very much suited to the vocal talents of Springsteen and Vedder.
And why do you think you've hit it off so well with Bruce? And I say this, I don't want to say the word is jealousy. There's just extra curiosity. Reason being, I've met pretty much every rock star that I ever wanted to meet in my life, members of the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and the Stones. Bruce Springsteen grew up 5 miles from me, and he's the one guy I've never met. And a lot of my teachers in school taught him. Everybody had stories about running into him at the movie theater.
You never did.
Never ran into the guy.
Oh,
I was in the same room with him a couple of times at Grammy things, but it wasn't like I wanted to rush up to the guy and go, "Hey, I'm from Englishtown. You're from Freehold." So,
yeah. Well, you may have wanted to do that, but you didn't do it.
Yeah, I held back. I just, he's not the guy I want to look like a jerk in front of.
Yeah, exactly.
But tell me about the first time you met Springsteen.
Sure.
and how you came to play with him.
Sure.
And be a member of the E Street Band, which I would have to think, even for yourself, is terribly exciting.
I kind of came to the Bruce party late. I grew up on metal, and then it was punk, and then it was hip hop, and Bruce Springsteen wasn't any of those. You know what I mean? And so it really wasn't until my early 30s where, maybe late 20s, there was an HBO. It was like, I think one of those Amnesty International tours. There was like an HBO special of the Amnesty International tour from Buenos Aires or something like that. And Bruce Springsteen was headlining. I love Peter Gabriel. He was playing Sting. Somebody else was playing. Anyway, so I watched it, and I had heard, like, I really only sort of knew the Dancing in the Dark video. You know what I mean? And I was like, I like the Clash. You know what I mean? That's good, but I like that. But I watched the Buenos Aires concert, and during it, I cried during part of it. I was overwhelmed by just how the crowd lost their mind. And I was like, there's more to this than I realized, man. So I bought Darkness on the Edge of Town and Nebraska. And I was like, oh, no. This is the shit. Like, he was speaking to, I come from a small town in Illinois. I couldn't believe he wasn't from the same town. And there was a lyrical depth and connection that I just was like, holy, like, this is, and I went all in, like all the bootleg, everything. Huge, biggest Bruce fan in the world. Didn't meet him till, man, like we were friends 8 years before we played together. I think it's probably through his sister Pam. Pam Springsteen is a rock photographer and took some pictures of me. And then, we were friends at a Bruce show, and I think I met him there. But we didn't really, and maybe a couple of Grammy things as well, but we didn't really connect until Rage Against the Machine covered his song, The Ghost of Tom Joad.
Yeah.
Right. So the next time I saw him, he was very interested in that. And like, whatever perceptions he had of Rage Against the Machine, he was surprised that we were covering a song off of one of his lesser known acoustic records. And that's when we first started talking. I think when we started talking, we found that we had some commonalities. And then the first time we played together was an epic and historic night in Anaheim, 2008. We played that song, The Ghost of Tom Joad. He was in the middle of making a record. I, ran into him in the studio. He was making a record with Brendan O'Brien. He said, "You should play with us sometime." I said, "I'm going to remember you said that." And we played Ghost of Tom Joad in Anaheim, and something happened. It was a bit of a hybrid version between the Bruce's plaintive acoustic ballad and the electric Rage Against the Machine version. And there was a guitar solo that went on for 82 bars, and at the end of it, we looked at each other and we're like that was like 2 + 2 = 975. We had no idea what happened, and over the next 6 years, we played together a lot.